Hi stamping friends, Sandi MacIver here. Today I'm going to share how I like to watercolor with my Nuvo Aqua Flow pens, and I'm going to be using the Hello Lovely stamp set from Concord and 9th. There are a variety of ways to stamp your images to get ready for watercoloring. I'm going to heat emboss mine with black embossing powder, and the reason being is it creates a bridge, and I'm going to be watercoloring the back image or the background after I color the actual image, and this little bridge will kind of keep all my ink where I want it. So you'll see that I have stamped it in VersaMark, and then I'm covering it with the black embossing powder, shaking off any of the excess, and then I'm going to heat set it. The Nuvo Aqua Flow pens come in 3 packs, and I'm using the Summer Holiday and the Winter Skies, and I'm going to get in right close here. I'm going to start with the purple, and I'm going to color that big flower. So how I like to play with these is I use my Aqua pen, my water brush, and I put a little bit of the purple into the center where usually it's the darkest part of the flower, and then I'm going to use my water pen to pull it out and blend it, and I do each petal at a time to keep the ink fresh and wet so it's easy for me to move it around. And if you find that you get too much, you can just blop it up with a paper towel, and if you need it a little bit darker, just keep adding more ink. These are very forgiving, and it's also nice not to have a great big mess. The pigment is nice and deep, so it blends out nicely. And for the leaves, I'm using a couple of the blues, and I'm flooding the area in both the colors, and then I'll go back and I'll just add a little bit of highlights in a few spots. And you'll see that sometimes it dries a little bit lighter, so you can always go back in and add another layer of ink to darken it up a little bit. So for these flowers I just did, or leaves, sorry, I just did the 2 colors of the aqua, the light and the dark, and I'm just kind of going in while they're still wet and letting them blend themselves. I'm just kind of leaving it up to the ink wherever it wants to go. And I'm finished with that part. And so next I'm going to move on, and I'm going to do these little leaves. I'm using the same 2 aqua colors, and I'm doing 1 leaf at a time because I want it to stay wet, because I'm introducing the azure blue, and that's going to be my shadow where it's kind of underneath the flower, and I want it to be a little bit darker. I just wanted a little bit of contrast, and if you do these individually when they're still wet, they're really easy to blend that darker blue in. And as you get used to it, you'll see that I work around near the end there. I start doing 2 or 3 because you get comfortable with coloring, so it kind of speeds it up, and you can do 2 or 3 and keep them both wet at the same time. And you can also come in with your Aqua Painter, your water pen, and you can add a little bit more moisture and then blend it around, as you see that I'm doing there. And I've been watching some of the watercoloring. I think on Instagram I noticed that some people were leaving a little bit of black and white. They weren't coloring everything. And I kind of really like that technique, so that's what I'm doing with this one. I'm not going to color the entire thing. I'm leaving those flowers and the little background leaves, I'm going to leave those in black and white. And that's why I decided to watercolor the background, because it's going to make them pop a little bit more. So here's where you see I'm doing 3 leaves at once. Once you get concentrating on it and get comfortable with it, it's easy to do a couple at the same time. I would kind of recommend doing just 1 at a time until you get used to the technique. As you can see, I'm working on my water media mat, and I'm going to use some of the black from the pen, and I squeeze my pen to get some of it into that little palette square, and then I squeeze my water pen to add a whole bunch of water to dilute it, because I want it way lighter than black. I just want that nice light gray. And so work in small sections at a time and move it around. If you find that your paint is still too dark, when it's wet, you can wick it up with a paper towel, which I'm about to do there because it's a little bit too dark. And I work in small sections, trying to keep the edges wet so that they blend together. But you can go back over and re-wet it just with your water pen and move some of the ink around and blend any lines together. You'll see me do that a couple of times as I work through this. And so I'm just quickly going around, filling in as much as I can, and I'm not going all the way out to the edges. I want a little bit of that white edge to be showing. I think it looks kind of cool. And this is really making the black and white section of this pop, as well as that purple flower in the center, which is hard to miss whether you're doing it or not. And you see how I'm going back there and I fix that little line? That's what I mean. Just wet it again with just straight water, You don't need any more paint, and wick some of it up and it will just kind of blend together. And there's already in the stamp, there's a splattering of black dots, which I really like, because that means that I don't have to do any splatter. It's already there. So I'm just about finished here. Isn't this neat how it just makes that black and white pop? And I'm using all cool colors in this one. I did do another one with warm colors, and I'll share that with you next week. It's also making the blue in those smaller flowers pop a little bit more, I think, which I find kind of pretty. There you go. I'm working with the Tim Holtz Distress watercolor paper, and of course we've gotten it wet, so it's a little bit warped, so make sure you use a good strong adhesive when you're getting ready to attach your art piece to the mat. And I'm using score tape. I find it nice and strong, but also easy to work with. And I'm putting a little bit extra down the middle because I want to make sure that it lays flat and looks really professional. And I'm matting it to a piece of black because I want it to pop. There we go. And then I'm just adding some foam tape to the back of this before I attach it to my card base. And this is a 5x7 card. And you can hop over to my blog and download the PDF for it. There's one over there for you, as well as a list of everything that I used for today's project. For the sentiment, I white heat embossed a sentiment onto just a scrap of black, and you'll see that I'm just trimming it down, adding a couple of pieces of foam tape on the back of it, and I'm popping it down into the right-hand corner. My final embellishment is Nuvo Crystal Drops. This is double denim, and I'm just adding a few dots at the top, at the bottom, just for a little bit of color in the background. So there you go. There's the pretty cards. Again, click down above the video. There is links to the PDF and also to a supply list for everything that I used today. And thank you so much for visiting me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all your thumbs up and all your comments. And until next time, happy stamping. Toodles!